Today we got a redraft 12-team PPR mock draft that we are going to go through. 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, a flex, and 5 bench spots. I am at the 104. Tyler is at the 109. And we're not going to waste any time. Let's dive right on into this one. Off the board first, we get Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, and Bijan Robinson. A little different tie than what we've seen so far.
Oh boy. Is that what kind of draft we're gonna have? Oh boy.
I guess so. I do gotta say, I don't necessarily hate it. Right. I understand, I think Jefferson's best wide receiver in the NFL. Obviously, I don't know if he should go first in fantasy. Bijan, that's kind of like calling your shot, especially if you like running back early. But it leaves me with who consensus has as the 2 and 3 pick of CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill. And typically I've been going CeeDee Lamb. But now that we're getting into this, this part of the season, I don't know if you saw that tweet, Ty, where Jerry Jones says, we'll figure it out or whatever. Like, we're not too concerned. And CeeDee Lamb just quote tweeted and said, LOL. So, I mean, I don't really want anything to do with that if I have the, if I get the choice between CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill. So I'm going to go Tyreek Hill here and just not deal with the CeeDee Lamb situation.
Nope, I get it. And I've been on record saying too that like we've seen the lows of CeeDee Lamb, and the lows of CeeDee Lamb are much lower than Tyreek Hill, but we are all infatuated by the second half of the season. So that's why I've always gone Tyreek Hill, and with the contract dispute, I feel it's even more locked in for me.
For sure. After Tyreek Hill does go CeeDee Lamb, then Puka Nacua jumps up there for you, Ty. Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Does this feel like a gift for you at the 109? Are you happy with Breece falling here, or are you still wanting to go a different direction?
No, I'm very happy with Breece because I think I would take him. No hesitation. No, I would take him literally as early as the 105. Like in this scenario, maybe the 106, just because Tyreek and CeeDee were available there. But like for a guy like Breece with his kind of upside and the volume that he could get, or I shouldn't say could get, that he will get, like that's unmatched. That's unbeatable at the 109.
For sure. After Breece, we got A.J. Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Garrett Wilson. Back to you, Ty. Where do you go from here, starting with one running back?
So I'm just kind of looking at pass catchers that are available: Devontae Adams, Drake London, Sam Laporta, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk. I'm not really a fan of any of these pass catchers, and this will be a very difficult build for the way that I am going to go with this pick. In the best way that I can at least argue for going double running back and going Kyren Williams here in the second is, at the end of the day, what wins you your fantasy matchups, fantasy points? There's no need, in my opinion, at least. Yes, it'll be a much more difficult draft, but can a Devontae Adams, a Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, Sam Laporta, Chris Olave, can any of those guys give you the kind of production and the upside that Kyren Williams has at their position? I don't think so. So I think, best player available at that point, probably. But we are now in for a doozy of a draft, because it feels like, majority of the mock drafts that we've done where you start double running back, it is quite tough to feel like you filled out your team in the best way possible. But for the first 2 picks, I'm taking just the best guys available.
Yeah, it does definitely feel like you're locked into pass catcher moving forward, which isn't the worst thing, because there are values at the wide receiver position. We've talked about a lot of them at depth. So as long as the board can fall to you in a way that's a little more predictable, you should be all right. It's when, you get some of those wrenches thrown in there. After Kyren goes Devontae, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, and Travis Etienne, who I was actually hoping would fall to me. I'm looking at my board right now. I got Sam Laporta, Chris Olave, Josh Allen, Devon Achane, Travis Kelce, Derrick Henry. Right, those are all guys that I'm not in love with taking in the second round, except for one of them, and that's Chris Olave. I like taking Chris a lot. We've talked about a lot as my as our wide receiver twos. Like I think
Mhm.
he's a fantastic wide receiver too because I do think he
Yep.
still has, pretty decent week to week upside. But you're not counting on him necessarily being like ultra, like that upper echelon consistent because he does have Derek Carr as his quarterback. So I'll take Chris Olave here. After Olave does go Kelsey, H.N., Josh Allen, Sam Laporta, Nico Collins, and Derrick Henry. Leaving me with kind of an interesting board, actually. Josh Jacobs, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, Isaiah Pacheco, Deebo Samuel, Hurts and Mahomes are there as well. And I don't know, Ty. I don't know which way I want to go with this. I know my rankings say Mike Evans, but I gotta say Pacheco feels very tempting here. He does. I know that helped your case a little
Oh!
bit. I know that helps your case because
Woo!
you need some running back to go.
Yes.
Um,
Woo!
and I know Lucas is a huge fan here of going Hurts. I know he's kind of a sucker for that, right, in this
Mhm.
area. But I think I'm gonna go Mike Evans. Just because I do have him higher. I'm gonna go kind of the opposite of what you're doing. I'm going that zero RB. You want heavy, robust RB. So we can kind of see how that plays out between the two of them. After Evans goes Mahomes, Jacobs, Diggs, and Pittman. Ty, you're scratching your head. It's like you're getting sniped again.
No, it's because Isaiah Pacheco is right there, and I love
Oh,
Pacheco, and I
ah,
went double running back.
oh, so tempting. Does he go three running backs to start?
Oh,
you
man.
would you want to talk about getting the people on your side? Three running backs would definitely not get the people on your side here.
That's like nailing the coffin in the
Yes,
3rd round. What do
yes.
golly. In my heart, I like this the sleeper board will probably will say Brees Hall, Kyra Williams, a wide receiver, but in my heart, it'll say Brees Hall, Kyra, and Isaiah Pacheco. Um, I'm gonna go with the wide receiver that I've got ranked probably the highest of the remaining wide receivers. That's Deebo Samuel.
Mhm.
Um, I think were we a little premature on or did the talks of him becoming a wide receiver one in fantasy come a little premature just because Brandon Ayuk hasn't been dealt yet, had not been dealt yet? Probably. But at the same time, Deebo Samuel, like, yeah, he's not going to get elite target numbers, but you're not asking him to get elite
Mhm.
receiving numbers with his rushing production, what he was able to do last year. Um, I think Debo is a very fine pick in the 3rd round. And now after Debo, then went DJ Moore, Jalen Hurts, Pacheco went. So team 12 went 3 running backs right off the rip. So why
Ooh.
couldn't I? Now
You
I
could
feel
have.
stupid.
Nobody was stopping you, Ty.
Well,
The
I
people
think my
were.
pride was the people where my pride was a little bit. But after Pacheco went Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, and James Cook, we need to go receiver here again. And thankfully, probably my favorite value
Yep.
in all of fantasy right now, DK Metcalf, 4th round is right there. I'm gonna go DK. I think DK honestly has top 15 upside this year, and for a guy going in the 4th round, it's pretty unmatched. Like I know Waddle just went in the 4th round. I don't think Waddle's necessarily going to be going in the 4th round in your actual drafts. Cooper
Yeah.
Kupp, I think he will start to rise a bit in drafts. I think we will start to see then like Diggs and Michael Pittman start to fall because of that.
Mhm.
Um, so if you were to put Diggs and Pittman and Neighbors and Metcalf and any of the other receivers available here in the 4th round, DK's got the highest upside of any of them.
Yeah, I would say if you're drafting in 2 weeks, this is kind of where the best ball board comes into play because best ball is usually going to be a couple weeks ahead of where your redraft is because there's so many more people there. And that like Cooper Cup there, wide receiver 16 going, 3rd or sometimes early 2nd round now off of the, news that he's fully healthy, off the news that Puka's a little banged up. But yeah, I gotta say, I knew that Metcalf pick was coming like the second you picked Debo. I was like, oh, yep, I know who he's going with. I don't blame you there. Like I think that's the right pick. After Metcalf goes CJ Stroud, Trey McBride, Rashad White, and Malik Neighbors. And I gotta say, I had a plan here all along to go Mark Andrews. But stinking Lamar Jackson is staring me in the face right here. I mean, oh,
Why would you not go Lamar in this situation?
I mean, late fourth round for a guy who's got quarterback 1 overall upside, and I'm in the 5th quarterback off the board. It's hard because I do know I like a lot more quarterbacks later on, especially on the sleeper board. That's where I'm tempted, right? Because I think Kyler's got the same upside. I think Anthony Richardson has the same upside. I think Dak and Joe Burrow don't necessarily have the same upside, but I think value-wise where they're going, right? I can get kind of, go Mark Andrews here, get Dak as opposed to, but man, I really don't know what I want to do. I think I'm going to go Lamar because I think that's the right pick at the value here. I didn't love the pick, but I made it. Oh, I was really hoping Mark Andrews come back to me. Um, after Lamar does go, Devonta Smith, Joe Mixon, Zay Flowers, Kenneth Walker, Mark Andrews, Tank Dell. I think I'm going to fully lean in here, Ty, to this 0 RB build.
Wow.
And I'm going to go with my tight end. And it is Kincaid and Pitts on the board there. And secretly, I want to take Pitts, but I know Kincaid's probably the right pick, so I'm going to make it.
You're just pandering to the audience at this point.
I am a little bit, but I do have Kincaid ranked higher. I just think there is a world where Pitts, just is ridiculous, right? And so I do think there's a world where that happens. But I think Kincaid being Josh Allen's number 1 target, it really doesn't get, there's not much of a better situation than being the number 1 target for Josh Allen, other than maybe being the number 1 target for Patrick Mahomes. After Kincaid goes Kamara, Amari Cooper, David Montgomery, and Kyle Pitts. And back to you, Ty. And I got to say, you've recovered pretty well. I shouldn't say recovered, but you filled out the team pretty well from your 2 running back start. So are you still looking pass catcher here? Where do you go from here?
Yeah, this one's kind of I'm in an interesting spot here because I'm looking at George Pickens and T. Higgins as the 2 top available pass catchers, and I'm a very big T. Higgins fan. But I'm kind of looking at the receivers that are coming up after them, and it's Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, Roma Dunze, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed. I don't think the receivers after them have necessarily the same upside as as George Pickens and T. Higgins do.
I would agree.
But Anthony Richardson is sitting right there. Oh,
yeah, that is a pretty look. And I know you're a huge AR guy.
oh, dude,
Huge.
oh man. So here is where you need to just I'm not going to say screw the rankings. I'm going T. Higgins. That hurts because I'm a huge Anthony Richardson fan, and I think Richardson, in terms of just the overall kind of appeal, I'll say it like that. Like Richardson, I don't think T. Higgins has like top 10 upside for wide receivers. Top 15 might be a stretch even to a certain extent. But I don't think that Richardson fits the way that my team is constructed through 4 rounds, which stinks. But that's just kind of the hole that I kind of dug myself in going to running backs early, right? So now we're even, I don't want to say we're even more behind the 8 ball at this point. From starting 2 running backs, needing to recoup on wide receiver. But now, because I had to recoup on wide receiver, I'm then missing out on elite quarterback talent, right? So that's just kind of how the draft unfolded. Now, there's a way to still make this team a very good team, and that is my goal, and that is my mission here. But like I say all of that just to show you, the listener, that that's kind of that's what's working against you when you do decide to do a build like the one that I have. So,
For sure.
and the other, the other thing is too, this is why we do mock drafts.
Mhm.
We do mock drafts to try out different strategies and stuff.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like you said, I mean, you can go in confidently now, into a draft knowing, hey, I can take two running backs early if I'm okay passing up on some quarterback and tight end, elite quarterback tight ends, because you can get like you look at a team, Debo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and T. Higgins. I mean, you could have three potentially top 15, top 18 wide receivers on your team, right? And you didn't take your first wide receiver till round 3. So that is huge to know that is possibility. You have that upside. Obviously, I mean, T. Higgins could have a heavy year like last year, the bottom falls out. But if you're not projecting that and you go get your guy, you're feeling pretty good all of a sudden, at least of your as we've called them before, 1Z positions.
Mm-hmm. So right after I took T. Higgins went Keenan Allen, George Pickens, Aaron Jones, and then Anthony Richardson went at the 601, followed by George Kittle and Christian Kirk. And now I'm on the clock again. And this was the alternative all along for me. And this was essentially what I was weighing in my mind. I am going down the board and I'm taking Kyler Murray. And that is about a 20 pick reach based on Sleeper's ADP. But I know that Kyler was not going to make it back to me with 4 teams picking after me, needing to bypass or to pass over Kyler Murray essentially 8 times for him to get back to me. I did not feel great about my chances. And so the way that I was looking at the last pick with T. Higgins was, okay, if I take Anthony Richardson, I'm then likely taking a Christian Kirk or a Chris Godwin. So would I rather have an Anthony Richardson and Chris Godwin, or would I rather have a T. Higgins and a Kyler Murray? And it's essentially just the trade-off of just upsides. I think Richardson has the higher upside at quarterback than Kyler, but I think T. Higgins has the higher upside than Chris Godwin at wide receiver. And that's where I needed more help at wide receiver. So that's why I went T. Higgins and then getting Kyler. He's our favorite quarterback value this year in drafts.
Mm-hmm.
Again, maybe a bit of a reach based on Sleeper's ADP by 20 picks. But again, we rate the guy so highly that I do not feel like that's a reach.
Yeah, for sure. And then after Kyler goes Ramondre, James Conner, Joe Burrow, and Chris Godwin. I got to be honest, I'm feeling gross right now, Ty, because I need a running back. I really do. And there's a guy that Sleeper says is a value here in DeAndre Swift, and I really don't feel like he's actually a value. And if I reach down the board a little bit, my next option is Najee Harris, who I also don't feel great about. The guy after him is Tony Pollard and then Zamir White. And I just don't feel lovely about any of them. I'm going to be honest with you. But I guess what I'm going to do here, man, I feel just disgusting.
Are you going to set it to break to think it over a little bit more?
I think that's, you know what? That's a great idea. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to get by myself a minute and a half to decide what the heck I do with this nasty board. So let's hear from my friends over at Underdog Fantasy.
Today's podcast episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, where it is best ball summer. There are 5 core best ball tournaments to play in with over $20 million up for grabs this summer. You can even take a crack at winning the top prize of $1.5 million in their infamous Best Ball Mania 5 contest. To enter, head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use the code FELLAS to get a first deposit bonus up to $250 and our 2024 draft guide for free. Again, head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app and use code FELLAS to sign up. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit npcgambling.org.
Yeah, so I still haven't decided what I want to do, and it's just I keep looking at this board and it gets worse and worse. I'm almost tempted to just go wide receiver here and take best player available, and just say screw it to the running back position. And honestly, Ty, I think I'm gonna do that.
Oh my!
I think I'm gonna go wide receiver here, and just go. You know what? I think at this point, all running backs are gross. I don't want to really make a decision. And my next highest rated wide receiver is Terry McLaurin, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
reason being is I think going Terry there, I can grab a later running back who's going to be comparable enough to DeAndre Swift, whereas I don't think I can grab any more wide receivers that are comparable to a Terry McLaurin later on in the draft. And I'm close enough where I can draft the running back that I want to take. And I'll admit it's a little ballsy, probably taking him as my running back one because of injury concerns, because of age. But I'm going to go with Raheem Mostert here. Just because if I'm looking at it, straight up, I think he's the guy that can score the most fantasy points out of everyone left at the running back position. I understand the concerns, but that's where I'm going to have. I've really pigeonholed myself to go. You're taking running backs pretty much the rest of the way, maybe one wide receiver, but that's just what I got to do with the build that I have. After Mostert goes Lad McConkey, Rashee Rice, Tua Tagovailoa, Najee Harris. Ty, you're at the point where you can kind of go wherever you want. So what direction do you go here? I know there's a guy on the board that you for sure want on your team. It's just, do you go with him this round or next round?
We are going to this will be a test of patience. Because I think the player that you were referring to is Jake Ferguson.
Yes.
But there are 3 other tight ends that are available with 2 teams that need a tight end right after me. So we're gonna test our luck a little bit. We could use one more wide receiver, and there's actually a wide receiver here available that I think fits the wide receiver 4 description of going to be not necessarily the number 1 guy, but will have a high target share in his offense. In an offense that will be playing from behind the majority of the time. I'm going to go Calvin Ridley here as my wide receiver 4. Again, not the highest upside in the world. But for a guy that is going to probably average, 5-6 catches a game, I don't think there are receivers that are going that late that have that kind of pathway to consistency, I think is the best way to put it. So right after Ridley then went Evan Ingram. So one of the teams has selected their tight end. So my bet is paying off. After Evan Ingram, then Zamir White and Nick Chubb and Xavier Worthy. So my tight end that I wanted is still available because the 2 teams after that had their tight end. So I will be going Jake Ferguson here. He's my tight end 7, folks. He is my darling at tight end this year. I'm A-okay with people sleeping on him, overlooking him. The more that CeeDee Lamb holds out, the more that this benefits Jake Ferguson, in my opinion. So to get my tight end 1 that I think has that kind of upside, right, top 7 upside in the 8th round, I don't want to say like I'm completely in love with my team, but like for starting double running back, there are much worse teams to have here. So I'm very, very pleased.
For sure. And I do got to say, I love the Calvin Ridley pick. He's a guy I've really, really been rising on, especially with the D-Hop injury. And so I really like that. After Jake Ferguson, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Hopkins, Brock Bowers, and Jonathan Brooks go, Ty, I'm going to give you one guess as to who I'm picking here. And if you don't get it, I'm going to be extremely disappointed with you.
Knowing that you are in need of running backs here.
Yes.
I wanted to say Deontay Johnson just for the memes. But again, you have 4 solid wide receivers. You do not need another wide receiver. And now just kind of looking at the running backs, and I'm like, who does Cam like the most in this range? Oh, it's Jaylen Warren.
Yes, it is Jaylen Warren. And especially like we're in PPR right now, I'm fully leaning into the PPR upside with Jaylen Warren here. Then after Jaylen Warren goes Deontay Johnson, Hollywood Brown, Christian Watson, Zach Moss, Keon Coleman, and Brian Thomas. And I'm going to be honest, I'm really happy with that because there was 3 guys there who were extremely tempting to me. And all 3 of them went at the wide receiver position in Deontay, Christian Watson, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it, Ty. The camp pipe's getting to me, but it's Keon Coleman. The camp pipe, those videos are getting to me. And so I'm really hoping that he gets drafted in every draft. I haven't taken him yet. I'm just getting excited. I'm feeling like getting a little FOMO. Like I'm going to like, he's going to pop up. I haven't taken him. I haven't.
Unbelievable.
Heart gets racing a little bit when we see Keon Coleman's. And after Jalen Warren, I'm going to go to a guy that's actually in a similar situation to Jalen Warren, and it's Tyjae Spears.
Oh, dude.
And the reason for that is he's the pass catching back behind a running back who's was a little disappointing last season. People are wondering if it was because of injury or not, if he can take over more of a role. He was listed as the co-running back one with Tony Pollard last week. So I'm going to take the shot on him. I kind of like how this running back room's shaping up. I'm sure I'm going to get just absolutely bashed for it. If I lose, it's because of taking these three running backs right here. People are going to go, Raheem Mostert can't stay healthy. Jalen Warren, Tyjae Spears aren't starting running backs, all which might be true. But I feel like with at least these three, can get two decently consistent running backs every single week. After Tyjae Spears goes Njoku, then Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams, and JSN. So Ty, you've got 4 wide receivers. You got 2 running backs, quarterback, tight end. So you can go anywhere. We know you wanted to go Tyjae Spears. At least I'm assuming. Or no, you wanted to go JSN.
Well, yeah. Well, after I knew that you were taking Spears, I wanted JSN, and now that dream's over.
So that makes me happy that you didn't get either of them. So now where do you go from here? Devin Singletary?
Gross. No, I think, with 2 stud running backs, but not having, thought about the running back position for 6 rounds, I think this is a time to grab at least one running back as a decent depth piece. And when I say decent, I mean just a guy that on any given week might give you like 10, 11, right? Like that's all that I really need. Like I know that Brees and Kyron are going to be starting week in, week out for me. So I'm going to go Brian Robinson here. I've got him as a top 30 running back. That's all that I'm really asking for. Just it's depth. It's not, completely valuable. You don't want to overrate depth at the same time, but running backs may miss time. Kyron and Brees have had their fair share of injuries before. You need some kind of reassurance there. So Brian Robinson is that depth piece for me. And then right after that, when Jared Goff, Devin Singletary, Dallas Goedert, Trey Benson, Jameson Williams, and Jaden Daniels, which leaves me on the clock again. This is going to be a wide receiver pick. Because, like we've got 4 pretty solid receivers, but they are, they need a 10th round wide receiver versus a 11th or 12th round wide receiver to be the number 5 guy, if that makes sense. Like that's just how I'm processing out loud. So the wide receivers available: Courtland Sutton, Romeo Doubs, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett. I would say that we are all fans of Tyler Lockett just because I don't think either of us see him necessarily slowing down enough to fail or to flunk out of this round 10 ADP. That being said, though, gosh, I have Courtland Sutton and Romeo Doubs ranked very similarly. Now that is also pending restats for the AFC West. So Courtland Sutton might fall, might rise, who knows? So essentially, I'm going to narrow this down to Curtis Samuel, Tyler Lockett. Like, I'm a big fan of Romeo Doubs, but here's the thing. Curtis Samuel could be Josh Allen's wide receiver 1. And that was the argument that I made in the last mock draft. So I'm going to switch it up because I think the same guys every single mock draft is boring, is dull. So psych. I'm going to psych you all out. I'm going Romeo Doubs.
He's talked himself in his circle.
I did. No, I think Romeo Doubs has an outside shot of being this Packers wide receiver 1. And it feels like a lot of people are kind of penciling in Christian Watson. I think the stats would, the advanced metrics would say that it points to Christian Watson. I think there's some merit to it. Some people might look at Jaden Reed just being the highest producing wide receiver last year, and I think there's some merit to that. But let's not forget that Romeo Doubs has probably gotten talked about the most and been given the highest praise so far throughout training camp in Green Bay. The guy had 8 touchdowns last year. He had 90 something targets last year. So again, on the chance that Romeo Doubs can be the wide receiver 1 in this Green Bay offense, he might just outproduce those 3 other wide receivers that I was kind of throwing in, in that conversation.
For sure. And I think that just kind of speaks to the bigger thing of tiers, right? We're in a big tier of kind of gross wide receivers right now. And it's not really that one's going to way out produce another. It's just all have similar ranges of outcomes. But Dobbs, if he truly is Jordan Love's number 1 this season, I mean, that's an explosion, right? Even if Curtis Samuel's the number 1 in Buffalo, it's like 108 target number 1. Whereas Romeo Doubs, if he sees 120 targets, could be double-digit touchdowns, could be 1,100, right? That's not in these other guys' ranges of outcomes. And, just speaking on, we don't know who the Packers wide receiver 1 is. For me, all that really does is I'm out on Jaden Reed because of it, because he's going the highest out of all the wide receivers. Whereas, like Christian Watson went the 812, Romeo Doubs just went the 1004. I'm willing to take that risk that later, whereas Jaden Reed's going in the 6th round, sometimes in the 7th round. Sometimes he goes, similar to like Terry McLaurin I took. Sometimes, he even goes by around Joe Burrow or even Anthony Richardson. So for those reasons, I'm out. But after Romeo Doubs, we get TJ Hawkinson, Pat Freiermuth, Cortland Sutton, and Zeke. And the other thing I did want to ask you, Ty, is because we talk about handcuffs sometimes. Is Blake Corum of any interest to you when you take Kyra, knowing Kyra missed 5 games last year? Or are you looking at that as it's too early to take a handcuff here in the 10th round?
I don't think it's necessarily too early. But I think it depends on just how the rest of your running back room is, how it unfolds. For me, Blake Corum being my 4th running back, like, yes, it's a really, I pick up right where Kyra left off essentially with, if he were to get hurt, then with Blake Corum. But my concern is I just don't know what the standalone value is for a guy like Blake Corum. So yes, there is some value to a handcuff, but for at least in my build with Breece Hall, Kyron, and Brian Robinson Jr., if I'm taking a handcuff, I need the guy to have some kind of standalone value, just because there's no one. I mean, I shouldn't say no one. There's only 3 players ahead of him on the fantasy depth chart, if we want to call it that.
For sure. Yeah. And that was just a question. I just want to throw it out there because I'm sure people who are in drafts right now are like, hey, Kyron got hurt last year. Should I be drafting his handcuff and Blake Corum? And interestingly enough, Blake Corum is out there for me. So is Gus Edwards. Did you see the report, Ty? This is not about Gus Edwards, but Kamani Vidal is looked as a long shot to make the team.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get practice squatted. Maybe if things turn around, can make the 53-man roster. But if you are worried about Kamani Vidal, you shouldn't be. It sounds like it's a Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins backfield. And knowing the two, Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, as the 2 guys run that offense, they're going to get a lot of work here. So I think I'm going to buy into that a little bit, take some, hopeful touchdown upside and go Gus Edwards with this pick, mainly because I do think, wide receivers are kind of gross here. We like Curtis Samuel, like Tyler Lockett. They're guys I have a lot of. Tyler Lockett's still there staring me in the face right now because Curtis
That's pretty
Samuel.
Convenient.
Yeah, I know. Curtis Samuel, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Chase Brown, Dalton Schultz, and Blake Corum all go next. And I was trying to switch it up because Ty's like, oh, we take these same guys every draft. But if you're going to give me Tyler Lockett at the 11-4, I really have no choice then. That's late enough where I really don't see a world outside of injury where he underperforms that ADP. Even if JSN lights the world on fire and is the clear to even like fighting DK for the 1 spot, I don't see a world with Ryan Grubb calling the shots there that he falls below the, this 11-4 ADP. After Lockett, we get Judy, Cole Kmet, AD Mitchell, and Jerome Ford. Back to you, Ty. And again, you're in a great spot again where you can really go any direction with this pick. So where are you looking here?
I think I'm going to grab one more running back for sure. And I'm going to scroll down just because it's the end of the draft. I really am. I don't want to say that like ADP goes out the window, but like I really am not really paying attention that closely to ADP last 2 rounds. So the running backs that I'm kind of looking at, I'm like J.K. Dobbins, kind of like what you had mentioned with Gus Edwards, right? Just it seems like it's going to be their backfield.
Yep.
Guy like Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, I knew you were looking Rico. I knew that would just tempt you a little, Ty.
But I've taken Rico Dowdle in quite literally every single mock draft that we've done. I need to switch it up.
But when he's there and you can get him in the end of the 11th, 12th round, that's hard to pass up on, knowing he could be the one in the Dallas Cowboys offense.
Yeah, I know. Gosh, I just feel so vanilla going Rico Dowdle every mock draft that
you
we
can
do,
pass.
but,
I will take him gladly if you want to pass on him, Ty.
No, we're gonna go Rico. I mean,
how can you not this late in drafts?
He is the most ideal late round running back target in fantasy this year.
Because
Man,
if he isn't it, right, he's done. Right, you just drop him right away, and you're fine with that. But if he is, and he's even the 1B in this offense, that's fantastic. After Dowdle for you went Luke Musgrave, tight end for the Green Bay Packers, Khalil Shakir, Kirk Cousins, Mike Williams, Jacoby Myers, and Zach Charcuterie. So back to you, Ty, with your final pick. What direction do you go with here? You said you were taking at least one more running back. Are you looking another running back? Or are you going wide receiver, tight end, or quarterback?
I think I'm gonna go one more running back. The more that I think about it, just because. I mean, there are some really nice wide receiver values, but there are also some running backs that I think I would rather roster and try to game the waiver board a little bit. If this were to become a league, I would try to just try to play the waivers out of the wide receivers. So the 2 running backs that it comes down to for me are J.K. Dobbins again, and Ty Chandler.
Ooh.
And I am going to go with Ty Chandler just to switch it up a little bit.
You son of a gun.
Ty Chandler. So back to kind of your question earlier about handcuffs, right, with Blake Corum, but then, when do you start looking for handcuffs? Do you target the handcuff for a guy that you already have on your team? Ty Chandler is the epitome of the handcuff running back that I want to target, a guy that figures to have some standalone value, but again, is a handcuff with contingent upside that, hey, if the guy in front of him misses time, Ty Chandler just suddenly walks into that role. So again, that's the kind of handcuff that I'm looking for in those kind of later rounds. Guys that figure to be involved in the offense right away. May not be a huge slice of the pie, may not be, a huge piece of the puzzle even. But they can have some huge upside if things, play into their favor.
For sure. After Ty Chandler goes our favorite, Jubba Hubba, then Jalen Wright, Xavier Leggett, and Rashid Shaheed. And to me, I really think this is actually an easy pick for me. And it's one of the guys right up the top of the board. It
Matt
is
Stafford.
It is
You're taking Lucas.
It is Josh Palmer. And the reason I like Josh Palmer in this situation is the report just came out that he's unlikely to play in their preseason opener or was unlike he did not play in the preseason opener. Not the report just came out. He did not play in their preseason opener on Saturday because he was clearly one of the starters. Right. So if you're going to be a starter on the Chargers with Justin Herbert, I quite like that role. Even though I think we've seen from Josh Palmer, he's not going to be this crazy, breakout guy making, finishing top 12. But if he's got a consistent role with Justin Herbert as quarterback, I do quite like that. And so I will take that chance at the end of the 12th round. So Ty, let's recap our teams. I'll go first since I was at the 104, and obviously the better team, the team that people want to hear from the most. And I went Tyreek Hill, Chris Olave, Mike Evans, Lamar Jackson, Dalton Kincaid, Terry McLaurin to start my 0 RB build. Then rattled off 4 running backs in a row with Raheem Mostert, Jalen Warren, Tyjae Spears, and Gus Edwards, finishing with Tyler Lockett and Josh Palmer in my bid for back-to-back mock draft championships. And I do got to say, it is hard because we really only hold these titles for a week at a time. So it'd be really nice to, go back to back, to be able to just stretch this out a little longer than 7 days. But I'll let you read your team, the pity team for the people. So go ahead,
Pity team, he calls it. Golly, I would like to see one of you or Lucas try to draft this good of a team after going double running back right off the rip. But speaking of that, I started Breece Hall and Kyron Williams in the first and second rounds. Then rattled off 6 non-running backs because I had 2 studs at running back. I went Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and T. Higgins for my first 3 wide receivers. Then went Kyler Murray, 20 picks ahead of ADP. But guess what? I do not care, okay? There was no way he was getting back to me, and his kind of upside with all the other quarterbacks available, I was like, yep, I need to go. I'm just going to go Kyler here. I grabbed my wide receiver 4 and Calvin Ridley right after that, and grabbed my tight end 1, my one and only Jake Ferguson in the 8th round. And then built out some depth for my team then with Brian Robinson Jr., grab Romeo Doubs in the 10th, Rico Dowdle, who could be the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys, and Ty Chandler in the 12th round.
For sure. And so make sure that you are subscribing. Make sure that you are turning on those notifications. Ty, I forgot again. We need Lucas because I forgot to announce our draft guide giveaway. And all you have to do is the video. We got to plug that like 15 times. And like the people need to know. So if you're one of the few who listen to the end, no, I shouldn't say few. If you're one of the proud who listen to the end, we thank you. And you now know about our draft guide giveaway. All you got to do is comment and subscribe to this channel. And you could win a draft guide on the very next podcast, which comes out tomorrow. I think it's 9 players to let your league mates draft is Wednesday. Then on Thursday is 9 players that your league mates are overlooking. So I don't know about you, but those titles sound like videos that you need to watch, Ty. Like that sounds pretty essential for your fantasy drafts. That's all. I'm not saying that you have to, but I would, if I were you, I'd probably subscribe and watch those if I wanted to win my league. I don't know about you, Ty. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I am in complete agreement, and not just watching the podcast, but it's also tuning into our live streams that we're doing every week. We go live on Monday and Wednesday. We are doing mock drafts and real drafts over an Underdog in those live streams. And that's your time to ask us all of your fantasy questions and stuff too. So if you want some help with who do you like more, this guy or that guy, anything fantasy football related or anything just in general. I mean, like, we're just 3 stooges just being dudes. I mean, we just talk ball and we chop it up. We like to just hang out and talk ball, talk life and stuff like that. So again, you can tune in, and you should tune in to the podcast, but you should also tune into our live streams as well.
For sure. Alrighty. We want to thank you again for listening. We won't keep you any longer, but we will see you tomorrow. So with that, deuces.